Hello everyone and welcome to the Ticker.com's news channel on YouTube. On this channel we review stock markets and discuss financial news, market trends, and economic data from Wall Street to Global Street. So let us get started. World markets continue to advance amid positive earnings, resilient U.S. economy, and labor markets. Wall Street indices overlooked harder than expected inflation reports in the U.S. and a slight drop in retail sales growth, as earnings supported market enthusiasm for the fifth consecutive week. As you can see on your screen, earnings dominated market sentiment around the world, and artificial intelligence euphoria drove tech stocks index to a 5-month high in Hong Kong, and indices in Europe reached new highs amid rate cut optimism. Turning our attention to the U.S. data, consumer price inflation accelerated to an annual pace of 3% in January from 2.9% in December. On a monthly basis, January's consumer price index advanced 0.5%, confirming that inflationary forces are far from tamed. Core inflation, which excludes food and energy prices, increased 0.4% from the previous month and advanced at an annual pace of 3.3%. Consumer price inflation is largely driven by the sustained increase in shelter costs, which accounted for 30% of the increase and advanced at a slower pace but elevated annual pace of 4.4% from 4.6% in the previous month. Producer price inflation in January slowed from December, but the level was still ahead of market estimates. Producer price inflation slowed to 0.4% in January from the upwardly revised 0.5% in December. On an annual basis, producer price inflation was unchanged at 3.5%, matching the upwardly revised rate in December. Core inflation, which excludes food and energy inflation, advanced 0.3% from the previous month and gained 3.6% from a year ago. Thursday's producer price inflation report follows Wednesday's harder than expected consumer price inflation report, confirming that the Federal Reserve is not likely to lower rates in any time soon. Moreover, inflation is likely to remain elevated as the Trump administration doubles down on imposing more import taxes or tariffs on shipments from key trading partners in Europe, Asia, and North America. U.S. retail sales rose at an annual pace of 4.2% in January, slower than 4.4% in December. Just keep in mind that the retail sales data are not adjusted for inflation. That means they are nominal numbers. On a monthly basis, retail sales contracted 0.9% in the month, following an upwardly revised 0.7% increase in December. Monthly retail sales declined at the fastest pace since March 2023, and sales were negatively impacted by severe weather across the nation and multiple fires in Los Angeles, California. Across the Atlantic, the UK economy unexpectedly expanded in the fourth quarter, driven by the rebound in activities in the construction and services sectors. Gross domestic product increased 0.1% from the third quarter when the economy was flat. On an annual basis, the UK economy expanded at a pace of 1.4% compared to a 1% increase in the third quarter. Consumer price inflation in January eased to an annual 4.3%, driven in large part by the slowdown in food price inflation in India. Food price inflation eased to 6% from 8.4% in December and fell for the fourth month in a row, driving down overall inflation. Consumer price inflation has been on the slide after reaching a peak of 6.2% in October, 5.5% in November, and 5.2% in December, and fell for the third month in a row. However, core inflation, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, eased to 3.7% from 3.6% in December. In other economic news, Eurozone industrial output declined in December, Swiss inflation stayed muted, and Germany's inflation showed signs of a rebound. China's new yuan loan growth slowed, but current account surplus reached to a new high, or rather new record high, in the final quarter of 2024. Japan's machine tools orders rose, driven by a rise in domestic and exports demand, and producer price inflation accelerated because of inclement weather conditions impacting food prices. Let us review key events in global bond, currency, and commodity markets last week. The yield on the 10-year U.S. Treasury hovered near 4.5% after the hotter-than-expected inflation overshadowed weak retail sales data and supported the case for the Fed to stay on hold. Texas crude oil prices edged lower by 2% to $71 a barrel, but demand growth appeared to be picking up amid strong economic activities in the U.S. and Asia. Natural gas prices in Europe advanced 6% to 53 euros per megawatt hour, driven by a milder weather forecast that are likely to lower heating demand. The euro edged higher to $1.05 amid speculation that peace talks with Russia may end the war in Ukraine sooner than expected. The yen eased to 153 against the US dollar amid market speculation that the Bank of Japan is likely to continue with its rate hike campaign. Let us shift our attention to major stock markets in the US, Europe, and Asia. The S&P 500 index and the Nasdaq Composite extended the rally to the fifth consecutive week in choppy trading amid strong earnings from McDonald's, Cisco Systems, S&P Global, Shopify, and Airbnb. European markets extended weekly gains to the sixth week in a row, and benchmark indices in Germany and the UK traded at new highs amid strong earnings from Barclays, Safran, Unilever, Nestle, Kering, Hermes, and Moncler. The Nikkei 225 stock average extended weekly gains to the fourth consecutive week amid strong earnings from Sony, Fujikura, Toppan Holdings, Kering Holdings, Rakuten, Tokyo Marine, and MSN A&D. Hong Kong and China indices advanced and the Hang Seng Index increased for the fifth week in a row, reached a high last seen in December, driven by a surge in tech stocks after the success of affordable artificial intelligence technology from DeepSeek. Indian market indices declined and mixed earnings overwhelmed the easing of inflation in January. Let us shift our attention to merger deals, market movers, and earnings updates from leading companies last week. Sony Group shares surged over 10% after the electronics and media company forecast stronger revenue and profit for the fiscal 2024, driven by strong gains in its gaming unit. Cisco Systems gained 7% after the networking company lifted its annual revenue outlook and expanded its stock repurchase plan. McDonald's said fourth quarter global comparable sales rose by 0.4%, but domestic sales struggled amid high prices. Marriott International said revenue advanced but profit fell in the fourth quarter, and the company guided higher earnings per share for the first quarter of 2025. MGM Resorts said quarterly revenue declined 1% to $4.3 billion despite strong performance in China. Deere & Company, the maker of tractors, dropped 5% after the company reported a sharp decline in sales and earnings in the fiscal first quarter, but the company reiterated its full-year net income outlook. Hyatt Hotels said net income swung to a loss in the fourth quarter, but the company held out for revenue growth in 2025. Barclays Bank reported a 24% increase in total income for the fourth quarter, and the company plans to return as much as £10 billion to shareholders over the 3 years to 2026. Unilever said profit declined 11% in 2024, and the consumer goods company plans to spin off its ice cream business. EssilorLuxottica reported a 4% increase in revenue for the fiscal year 2024, ending in December, and the largest retailer of eyeglasses acquired Germany-based Heidelberg Engineering. Siemens Energy advanced more than 1% after the wind turbine and gas power equipment maker estimated revenue growth in all of its units, except for Gamesa, a wind power division. In the week ahead, U.S. investors are looking forward to the release of FOMC minutes and comments from several Fed officials for insights into the central bank's policy outlook. Investors will also review building permits, housing starts, and completions data, and existing home sales. On the earnings front, investors are awaiting quarterly results from Analog Devices, Arista Networks, Walmart, Baidu, Alibaba Group, Toro Corporation, Medtronic, Carvana, and Toll Brothers. In Europe, investors are looking ahead to the release of business activity surveys from Eurozone, Germany, and France. In addition, the euro area trade balance, Germany's inflation, and Switzerland's industrial output are on schedule in the week ahead. On the earnings front, investors are waiting quarterly updates from Mercedes-Benz Group, Renault, Airbus, Zurich Insurance, Antofagasta, Schneider Electric, Carrefour, Accor, and HSBC Holdings. In China, housing prices will remain the focus on investors' mind, and the PBOC is expected to hold loan prime rates. Japan is scheduled to release its update on GDP growth in the fourth quarter, and January's trade balance and inflation are also on deck. In India, the Reserve Bank of India is set to release its minutes of the latest policy meeting, and the government is scheduled to release international trade statistics. On the earnings front in Asia, investors are awaiting results from Bridgestone, Trend Micro, Lenovo Group, Sands Asia, Wilmar International, and ABB India. You can review daily U.S. and global financial market news, stock movers, earnings releases, SEC filings, and economic updates on ticker.com and 123jump.com. You can find the latest financial books on Rudera.com, keep up with financial industry events on eventsinamerica.com, review ETF and mutual fund performance and in-depth profiles on tickerfunds.com, and review market updates and stock movers in India on niveshak.in. That is all for today, and we will